So, welcome. This is Laina Orlando, and I am offering Ascensions with A Course in Miracles, which is something that I've been doing now for many years, like four years, every Wednesday, almost every Wednesday. We've missed one or two here and there. We meet at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and through these gatherings, I offer what I call a transmission. Something gets transmitted through me to you. I don't call it channeling. I received my own guidance, and I was guided many years ago, almost 20 years ago, to teach a course. I was given a course to teach something I had never taught before. So, needless to say, when I received it, I was like, how am I going to teach this? I don't know this stuff. Called The Power of Awareness. And it was about how to become self-aware. And I offered that for many years in the form of a retreat, and I will begin to do those at some point. Maybe this might be the year that I start that, or maybe it's next year. I'm not sure. And it is a very experiential process where you really get to see not only the voice of your ego, but you also get to feel, experience the essence of who you really are as God created you. And about 5 years after I was given the power of awareness to teach, I was guided to begin to study A Course in Miracles. And when I began to study the course, I realized why I was given the power of awareness to teach first, because the course taught me that to teach is to learn. As I was teaching it, I was learning it, I was embodying it. I was becoming clear where there were inconsistencies, where my teaching wasn't matching what I was experiencing. So my walk and my talk had to become congruent. It was very, I was learning what I was teaching in front of an audience, and my ego many times wanted to say, "Hey, don't tell them about what's going on in your life because then they're going to know you don't know this stuff." But my soul was saying, "No, we're going to use your life as an example." And ever since I started sharing information, I always use my life as an example, which is why I feel my work becomes so much easier to digest, because if I can explain how these things that we are learning get put into real life practice, it just makes it a little bit more achievable, I think. Not everybody needs that, so I'm not the teacher for everybody, but those who learn through the experiences of others can see that I'm just an ordinary woman, and I've been given the same information, the same knowledge that so many have received, that is in the Course in Miracles, that Jesus was crucified for teaching. These are the teachings, so many of them that are found in lots of other amazing texts and books, and channeled right now through thousands of beings on the planet. And all of it was preparing me for what we are about to encounter in about 5 years. By the year 2030, life is going to be very different. We are in the process of bifurcating. What that means, we're in the process of choosing sides. I often use this chart showing the ego's world and God's world. I use this chart, which is from the Map of Consciousness, written by Dr. David Hawkins. Um, Actually, the book is called Power versus Force, and in there he lays out the map of consciousness, and I've condensed it to use this chart. So either we're ascending, this is God's world, or we're descending, this is the ego's world. Whether you look at it visually this way or you look at it this way, however it helps you, it's all perfectly okay. It doesn't matter um, which way is your preference. What matters is that you find here the information that will assist you in making that choice. So a couple of things have happened since, well, the last month or so. I have my YouTube channel has started growing quite a bit. And for me, a lot, because I went from 400 or 500 uh, subscribers to now I've got close to 900. So it's growing pretty fast. Hey, Mike, good to see you here. So
Good afternoon.
it is growing pretty fast for me. And what I have noticed is that, like everything, people are picking sides. Either they agree with what I'm sharing or they're disagreeing with what I'm sharing. And that's perfectly okay. But here's what I'm noticing. When we are making our choice, consciously or unconsciously, we can only come from one of two places. Either we're expressing ourselves through the lens of the ego, or we're expressing ourselves through the lens of God's perspective. So, seeing how even though people come to my channel because they're interested in A Course in Miracles, what I put out there has in the title Course in Miracles. So there's no denying that I am a teacher and a student of the course. But what is so clear, especially as I observe the world, and today is, what is it, Wednesday, March 5th. So in the US, we just happen to have the president of the United States provided a speech last night, I don't know if he called it a State of the Union, but anyways, he gave his first public talk um, to our elected officials, our representatives. And it was so obvious that you could see the divisiveness right there in those who govern. And those who govern, one of the things that we have to understand is that if you are governing and you're listening to the voice of the ego, your intention is very simple. It is to instill fear. It is to control humanity. It is about secrecy. It is about deception, because that is what the ego does. So it cannot help but try, well, not even try, it cannot help but attempt to, but that's another word for try. It is simply governing from that place. Now, when you hear the voice of God coming through someone, you know that it is God, because it attempts to unification. It attempts to bring about transparency. It is all about equality. So we are seeing. If you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, you can see the split is happening. Now, it has been going on for a while, but over the next 5 years, there is I don't know if this is a word or not, but I'm going to go with it because it's what's coming through, a solidification. It's going to solidify which side you are picking. This world that we live in, this third dimensional world that we live in, has been operating as an ego-run world, ego-driven world. Course in Miracles says this is the world the ego has made. We live on the planet as we know it right now, as the world the ego made. And the reason the Course calls it the world the ego made is because whatever you make, you can unmake. You cannot uncreate what God created, but you can undo what man has made. So we are right now in the process of having to make a choice. And here's what's really fascinating. The choice is being made consciously and unconsciously. What I mean by that is, if you are aware to what is going on, if you are self-aware, if you understand who you are as God created you, and you understand the masks that the ego puts forward. So for example, some of us are studying the book Untethered Soul, some of us for the 10th, 15th time, and some for the first time. But in the Untethered Soul, Michael Singer describes that the ego basically gets created because we have held on to energies that we couldn't process primarily as children. So as a child who cannot process energies, we store energies, and he calls those samskaras. So we are holding energetic, I'll call them little balls of energy within us, masses of energy that have solidified, that they have come together and created this false sense of self, because it is based in fear. You weren't safe as a child to express yourself as who you are, so you compensate, you create behaviors to manipulate the world that you're in to try and keep you as safe as possible. So we, instead of being our loving selves, then we get to be somebody who's unloving. We get to be somebody who's manipulative. We get to be somebody who is passive aggressive or aggressive. We do whatever it takes to get what we want, which as a child is typically safety and to feel loved. But those things, when they're created from the ego, give us a false sense of who we are. So then you take those children who grow up to be adults and have positions of power, who are running the world. Well, the reason they like secrecy is because they're holding secrets. They don't want anybody to know. They don't want anybody to think that they're coming from fear. So it is so important that we understand that to consciously choose to move through this bifurcation, to move to a higher dimension, Course in Miracles calls it a happy dream, to move to a place where we all live from the knowing that we are as God created us and begin to enjoy the earth that God created, not the world that the ego made. To consciously choose that, you must become somebody who is very self-aware, because honesty is one of the most important characteristics. You must be honest. Are you protecting a fear inside of you, which is always going to come from a childhood place, and it's going to be part of an immaturity within us? Are you prepared to be really honest and go, "Oh, I just reacted because that touched, that scared me. This thing frighten me." And the fears are going to be fear that I'm going to be exposed, fear that I am going to be seen for, the fraud that I have been, because everything with the ego is about fraud. It is a total incomplete attempt to be God, to be God, to think that I know everything that God knows more than God knows, or the opposite to that is to pretend that I'll never be as worthy as God wants me to be, because the ego operates in victim and bully. I am either better than God or I will never be as good as God. Please, so dramatic. Um, all in an attempt to manipulate, all in an attempt to put on this idea of fakery. So either you can be honest about that. Ooh, this just activated. As I say, Mike, you were asking me about this the other day, one of our last episodes, that every irritation is an invitation to see our ego's motivation. Our ego is motivated through lies, through feeling inferior or superior. That is the only way the ego can operate. Because if the ego wasn't there, we would be all equal brothers and sisters as God created us, and we would acknowledge our equality with God. Course in Miracles says that there's only one difference between God and us. One difference. That is it. God has only one power, and it's not even a power. God's done one thing we cannot do, and that is that God created us. We cannot create ourselves. We cannot create God. God created us. God is and has always been from the beginning of eternity. From that energy, that brilliance, that intelligence, that love that is God, we were birthed. We cannot birth God. We cannot birth ourselves. God did that. So, for example, I created my children. They came through me. They cannot create themselves. That already happened. And now they can create other children. Like my daughter has gone on with her husband to co-create two grandbabies for me. But all that started from me, but I am not the beginning of it all. God is. So we must give all of the glory of creation to God and then accept our role as co-creators with God, so that everything that extends from here forward extends from God through us, through all of the future generations. To become conscious of who we are as God created us, and to become self-aware of the ways that we block that from our awareness, that we pretend that we're less than or we're better than, that we pretend that, my religion is better, or my spirituality is better, or my color is better, or my gender, my whatever, is to operate from the ego, because the ego is what perpetuates divisiveness. And it does so because it believes in separation. when you know that you are as God created you, when you know that you exist in the oneness that is God, there is no separation. There is only individuation, meaning we all express ourselves uniquely as we were created. For example, going back to the example of the family, in my family there is a mother and a father. I've got, those who co-created me, those who co-created my the father of my children. No matter what, we're all part of oneness because we're all there are lineages that have been intermingled and are continuing to express themselves. However, there's individuation because we don't all talk to each other. Not everybody is here. My parents are long gone. My kids' dad's parents are long gone. And some of those kids don't necessarily speak to their dad's, all the members in their dad's side, or speak as often to all the members on my side. It doesn't matter. We're still considered family. And that's what oneness is all about. We're one no matter what in this human way of understanding oneness. But in God's way of understanding oneness, we're all one big family. We cannot not be one big family because we're all made of the same essence that God is. So to consciously move through this bifurcation is to know who you are, accept your role in this creation, and begin to acknowledge that when you tap into what God is, the truth of what God is, when you move out of your egoic understanding of God on a cloud out there somewhere, like a vengeful father ready to punish you because you were naughty, or ready to reward you because you were nice. Once you move out of that immature way of looking at God and you come down to a relationship with God that is only cultivated if you go within. Why? Because God's in you. You're not going to find God on a cloud out there. Of course, God is in the cloud because God is in everything we see. However, that's not where you're going to cultivate a personal relationship with God. You've got to come to the God within. Jesus taught us this. As a matter of fact, this is the one thing, probably one of the two most important reasons why he was killed, because he was wanting us to realize that God is within. You don't need the outside, Pharisees and rabbis or whatever, or the temples to tell you where God is. The other reason they killed him is because he was speaking against the money changers. He was totally, completely against the corruption of money. So does that sound like something we're experiencing right now? Where you're exposing the corruption of money, taking us 2,000 years to finally get to that when you begin to give power to external forces that they think they know where God is, well, it's very inconvenient. So if you're exposing that these rabbis and these people, they're wonderful, they're all children of God, but they're listening to their ego, and when they listen to their ego, they're making themselves superior and you inferior. They're creating separation, and then you got to pay them to get to God. So do you see how messed up that is? So God, or Jesus, was very inconvenient to that game that was being played 2,000 years ago and is still being played today, when government attempts to tell us that they know better for us. So consciously to choose the happy dream that you want to co-create is to know who you are and accept the responsibility that you have to accept for being very clear about what you are contributing your time, your energy, and your money to your choosing by unconsciously being completely unaware of who you are. If you don't know who you are, you're looking for an external authority to tell you who you are, to protect you, to give you the rules, the laws, the regulations that, if you study lesson 77 with me, I think it's 77, it says, I'm under no laws but God's. So when you understand God's laws, you operate in one way. If you don't understand God's laws, you're going to fall for anything that appears to be an authority. That anybody who frightens you, if you don't pay your taxes, you're going to be in trouble. If you don't follow this law, we're going to take this from you. If you don't, do this procedure, we're going to take your license from you. If you don't do this, we're going to take your home from you. You can see the ego, absolutely see the ego by pretending to be an authority. And it's a false authority because there's only one authority. As a matter of fact, today, as I was sitting okay, what are we gonna, where in the course am I going to go to? I was taken to a couple different places, but then it became clear that there's lots of things that need to be shared that are in the course, but it's going to take a while. So I'm going to finish this one point about choosing unconsciously, and then I want to get back to something that I've been guided to do that you're, I'm announcing it here for the first time. So to be unconscious means to not know the truth of who you are, and then you're going to fall for false authorities. And because out of fear, because you don't know who you are, you operate in fear. Out of fear, you're going to follow what somebody else tells you to do. When you follow them, you're following the egoic rulers. And they're again, they're children of God. This is why the course is so beautiful. We don't need to be upset with anybody on this planet. Everybody's playing a role. Everybody's playing the role either from a level of awareness of who they are and who they're giving authority to, or from a level of lack of awareness of who they are, and they think that the authority belongs to this concept of who they are, of what God is, according to an immature, scared little child inside who is looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for power in all the wrong places. Our world has been primarily run by people who were listening to the ego. People who listen to God through history are very inconvenient to the establishment. That's why most of them get put to death or come to uh become, go off into the caves and be by themselves because they know that what they know is very inconvenient to the world that the ego has made. But the world that the ego has made is only sustainable by one who doesn't know the truth. This is why the truth sets us free. Course in Miracles is a course in mind training, training our mind to think correctly, to think, to by remembering, by reminding us through the constant repetition of the lessons, through the depths that is in the text, and then through the preparation through the manual for teachers to be one who walks the talk. And when you are aware, and this is really a place again where honesty kicks in. If you are operating as somebody who thinks you know everything and you're right and it's your way or the highway, and you're operating from the ego, which only the ego would think it knows everything, then you are complicit in co-creating a world that is egoically run. Because you're saying, I'm not listening to God. I think I'm God. I think I know better than God. Or I may say, oh, yes, yeah, I go to church on Sundays and whatever, or I'm spiritual even. But if you are defending your righteousness, you are in an egoic trap because the need to be right is egoic survival. I need to be right about all of these ways that I have been manipulating the world because I don't really know the truth of who I am and I don't know where to go for the truth. You're choosing, albeit unconsciously, you're not aware that you're choosing to put yourself further in bondage to an enslavement of the mind first and then of the physical body. Because when you worship something outside of you that is has decided that it gets its power from those who worship them, not from God. It gets its power from the people, and it also believes that power and money go together. Then humanity is used in an enslaved way to continue to work hard and pay those taxes, which is the very thing that Jesus overturned in the temple. The money changers, the tax collectors. Jesus was very clear. We are not to hurt one another. We are not to oppress our brothers and sisters. We are to do everything within our power to support and assist one another. Currently, one of the reasons we have one side of the aisle in our government completely up in arms is because the other side of the aisle that is now appears to have control. This is all, it's all a game if you look at it from the perspective of Course in Miracles. People who believe that they have power. Um, It's very clear those who do not want for all of us to see the way money has been used to keep people in enslavement, to help themselves and to perpetuate this incredible enslavement of humanity. Because where does all that money that gets used in dark ways go, how does that get generated? Well, it's through you and through me. We're working enslaved into working these crazy hours to pay these taxes, to pay property taxes, to pay, gas taxes and food taxes and license. If you want a fishing license, there's a tax. If you want to drive your car, there's a tax. All of these crazy taxes. And by the end of the day, I remember reading something that calculated that really, you earn $1. And by the time it is all taxed, you end up with like about 30 cents of it. I mean, but we are not paying attention to all of the ways that we are taxed. And that is exactly what Jesus did when he overthrew those tables in the temple, said, no, we don't treat each other like that. So you can see the side that wants to protect what is being done in the dark, that keeps humanity enslaved, keeps Americans enslaved, working, send our money, and not a fear that if you don't pay your taxes, you're going to get in trouble. Well, then you stay in that game. You stay playing that game. And then there's a group that wants to expose it. If there's nothing to hide, why hide anything? Let's expose it. Let's look at all of it. Now, I'm not saying that one group is any better than the other because all of them are brothers and sisters in Christ, but they're all playing different roles. And when you understand the levels of consciousness, those who are completely asleep and those who are a little bit more aware, more awake, maybe understand psychology, those who understand psychology and understand the mind, but understand also our connection to God, those who understand our connection to God, understand psychology, and have opened their heart and allow God to go through them. These people, we show up in very different ways. Our walk and our talk is very different. So you have to understand where you're at so that you can honestly be able to sense where another is, because you cannot sense where another is if you haven't walked in those shoes first. So this work is about becoming, and when I say this work, understanding what the Course in Miracles is attempting as a course in mind training is to help you understand where are you on this continuum of expansion. It has been over what appears to be thousands of years, maybe hundreds of thousands of years, that humanity has shrunk into a very small sense of self. That's what I depict here. If you look at this, it's a spiral. When you look at the spiral from up here where God is and go, oh, whoa, humans have been going down little by little into low levels of consciousness. That's what this third dimension is all about, where we have bodies and minds and we have a heart, but we're not using them all in alignment because the mind gets conditioned from a very, very young age to self-protection, which is egoic, because our heart got hurt as a child. We didn't understand. When we were expressing ourselves as a sweet little innocent soul, somebody yelled at us or somebody spanked us or somebody hurt us deliberately. And we closed down. We were like, this doesn't feel safe, which is a natural thing for a child to do. And in that, this doesn't feel safe. We created barriers. We created what Michael Singer calls samskaras. Course in Miracles basically is just the development of the ego. Then the ego strategies, beliefs, ways of dealing with the world get created, but the heart gets closed, and the mind gets trained into everything is about me. It's all service to self. I got to protect myself because I can't trust any of these people. And when you start that way when you're a child, then you grow up as an adult to be someone who is manipulating the world to get what you want because you're protecting your pain, you're protecting your wound, you're protecting your most vulnerable self that you don't want to talk about because then people would think there's something wrong with me. Well, this is what has been running the world, is people who really are in service to themselves, utilizing their positions of power to control others. So again, really simply, You become self-aware, realize nobody has power over you. You either give them your power or you don't. When you do not give your power away, you then take responsibility for co-creating your happy dream. When you give your power away, it's because you believe somebody else is going to take care of you because you either out of fear do what they tell you, or you have come to believe that, oh, that's the only one that I can trust and they'll take care of me. You do not have a personal relationship with your true self because you're operating with the ego. You either follow them or you're going to co-create on this side. And pretty much up until 2030, maybe 2031, 32, that's about when the timeline split is going to be finalized. Now, that means that we're all going to be living in this world, but we're going to see very divided um, ways of being. Some communities are going to operate with total control. You could call that, we could see how in many ways that has happened. For example, the Amish, they live in a frequency of connection with God and they operate and nobody really messes with them. They do their thing and they come into the world, they sell their goods, but they stay in their little area. We're going to see that people who basically they operate in a certain level and if it's a high frequency, they're not going to be mingling too much with people who are of a lower frequency because when you recognize that you don't have anything in common, if you're in a high frequency, you respect that. You let them be. Okay, if you want to do it that way, that's fine. But it's not what resonates with me, so I'm not going to participate in that. And people who are listening to the ego who need to operate in control are going to basically have to continue to sell their soul is not the right thing because you can't sell your soul, but they will continue for the story of protection. They keep them safe. They're going to lean that way. You know, when you look at what happened with COVID, it was so clear to see those who chose not to participate and those who chose to participate. And then this side was basically told that this side doesn't care about you. They're terrible. They're selfish. They're whatever. Well, if you understand the principles of A Course in Miracles, you are not a body. So, how can these bodies make this body sick? It's not possible. But when your mind is trained into believing that these people have power over you, then you are going to be in fear of what these people do who chose not to take the medication. So, we're going to see more of that. The groups whose minds are being controlled to believe in a certain way, and those who want total complete freedom to express themselves as God created them. That bifurcation is happening, friends. Are you consciously choosing this or unconsciously participating in that? There's only one way to tell. Are you looking for safety? Then you're going to be willing to be controlled. Are you standing for freedom? Then you do not want anybody controlling you. You want to get your guidance directly from God. And then people who are guided by God, there's no way anybody's going to be controlling anybody else because you all know you're getting your guidance from God. And when you operate from that inner guidance, you operate in honesty and in trustworthiness and in joy and in kindness and generosity. I mean, it's a very different way of being in the world. So the last thing I wanted to share was that this is all inspiring me to create a community. I've got a platform where I've got some of my courses, and some of you are doing that course right now, and I'm going to create a community, and it is going to be a very common model because a lot of other teachers use this model of it's a membership model. And I'm going to do a very minimal monthly membership, but I'm in the world and I also operate with income, and that's just the way that it is. And believe me, if I could just do this for free all the time, I would. But I'm not quite yet at the place that I've achieved the abundance that I absolutely trust as part of what's coming. Um, but until then, I am going to do a membership, and it's going to be, like I said, very minimal. And by minimal, I'm talking 20, $30 a month or something like that. Still trying to work out those details. But I want to create a community for those who are really serious. And when I say serious, I mean want to do what the Course in Miracles states. In the introduction to A Course in Miracles, we are told, I'm going to read just this line. Um, from the introduction to A Course in Miracles that we all have free will. And sentence number 4 says, free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum, meaning you cannot alter what it states in here. Sentence 5 says, it means only that you can elect what you want to take at any given time. So the course, I have found there is nothing that either calibrates higher, that speaks truth exactly as Jesus did when he was on this planet, in a way that is attempting to free our minds from the egoic trance that we have been in. So those who really who realize I'm not going to alter what's in the course. I just want to be with a group of people that want to practice what is in the course, to support one another, to really create a community that is completely based on the integrity of desiring to become a teacher of God because you want your walk and your talk to match. Meaning you are totally, completely not only open, but you want to be held accountable to where you let the ego, try to confuse you and try to seduce you into listening to it instead of having the courage to do what the course is telling you to do. So it's the community that I want to build because I have said this before and I'm going to say it again. I was given the least sexiest spiritual thing to teach. Everybody else gets to channel and talk about the love and the light and all those wonderful things, and I get to talk about the ego, the pain in the ass part of this journey. And of course, I don't have a lot of people who are so interested in learning about what you're not. Everybody wants to know what they are. But you cannot be what you are if you don't remove the obstacles to what you already are as God created you. And the obstacle is this false identity that we all have created that starts with the idea that you are not whole, perfect, complete, and magnificent as God created you. That means you have to understand that if you believe that God created junk, you don't know God. So that means you have a false concept about God. So not only is this community that that I'm going to start here probably within the next month or so, you've got to be humble enough to say, I don't know what God is. Because if you accept your perfection, then you know God's perfection. Then you don't need this community except for if you just want camaraderie with those who are willing to own our magnificence, who are willing to own, yes, I know God's perfection because I feel it in me. But that comes from a very humble frequency. That comes from a place that knows it, that can walk among a world that is operating in total complete delusion because they listen to the voice of the ego. And you are just there to not only witness your brothers and sisters who are either calling for love or you're co-creating with those who are the expression of love, the happy dream. It just becomes super, super simple. To get to that place, of course, is what this journey is about. It is the undoing of that false self. But the ego does not like to be undone in public. The ego doesn't want others to point at it because the ego is all about secrecy. It even lies to us. We think we're the ego because the ego doesn't want to tell us that we're not the ego. So it takes a lot of courage. It takes it takes facing fears that you're going to be found out. But when you are serious about liberation, you want that part of you found out. Because when we do it in a loving frequency, it is all to serve and support the greater good. It is I'm going to create a community that's very loving. Anybody who's not operating lovingly will not be able to remain because it is not of a frequency that I am wanting to create this happy dream with. However, nobody's going to get kicked out if they're in fear. Everybody will be given a chance after time after time to face because when we are judging others, that is the opportunity to see what are you not accepting about yourself. Anybody who's having an issue with either political party, doesn't matter. Anybody who's pointing fingers and judging and blaming and you're this, you're that, doesn't recognize that they're just simply telling everybody else who they really are. What inside of them hasn't been looked at. Those people are calling for love. They're not calling for condemnation, because to condemn them is to not recognize that you're also coming from the egoic side. Because when we move to that frequency of love, all that you can do is have compassion for those who are either aware of the truth or in the trance of the ego. That's it. Super, super simple. So today I was told to go to chapter 3 in the text. And chapter 3 in the specific section that I'm in. So chapter 3, the title is The Innocent Perception. The section that I was told to look at is section number 6, which is judgment and the authority problem. So again, chapter 3 in the text. And inside of chapter 3, titled The Innocent Perception, I am in section number 6. So, section number 6, the judgment and the authority problem. And here it goes on to say, we have already discussed the last judgment, but in insufficient detail. So, the last judgment is basically where God is letting us know, religion has trained us to believe in the last judgment when God is going to judge us. And basically, the Course in Miracles teaches it totally differently. The last judgment is really when we finally judge ourselves for the last time. When we stop judging ourselves is the last judgment. When you stop thinking you're not good enough, you're not special enough, you're not smart enough, you're not whatever. When you stop judging yourself, that's the last judgment. That is because the only one that judges is ego. God doesn't judge. So God cannot have a judgment. So the last judgment cannot come from God. It must come from us listening to the ego. So after the last judgment, there will be no more. When you stop judging yourself, who else is, who doesn't matter what anybody thinks of you, because you don't buy into the whole idea of judgment anymore. You don't buy into the idea of the ego. Judgment is symbolic because beyond perception, there is no judgment. So when we stop perceiving the world through the ego, meaning that scared little child who is afraid to be hurt or to not be loved, when you stop looking at the world through those immature lenses, then you're an adult looking at it objectively. And objectively means, as the Course teaches, either everybody's operating from love because they know who they are and they're moved by God. And you can tell they're all in service to the greater good. You can tell that there's a desire for collaboration, cooperation, transparency as part of that. When you see transparency, when you see a willingness to put everything out there, you know you're dealing with people who are not there to judge you. They're there to support in the expansion. The ego, on the other hand, cannot be objective because it is subjected to the beliefs that it experienced as a child. And when the ego perceives the world through those immature lenses, they get locked down. You will always perceive as the age of your deepest wounding, meaning you can be 80 years old and feeling judged by somebody. You're acting like that 2, 3 year old that you were at the time that you experienced your deepest wounding, or younger than that. You could be in the womb still, acting like a really, really, very, very immature, fragile, little, scared being inside. This is why the Course says, when you know the truth of who you are and the truth of everybody, you cannot help but either recognize those who are operating from love. Everybody else is calling for love, because the deepest wound in us got created when we felt unloved, typically by mother, father. That's where it starts. And then, of course, from there it goes on. So when you begin to see everybody through the eyes of God, you can't judge anybody. But when you've done your work, you can then see, wow, this person is in anger, this person is in fear, this person is in courage or in shame. You now know how to address them. You now know the kind of love you're bringing to them because you've been in those shoes. So It's impossible to judge others when you have achieved the level of liberation that the course is taking us to. This is a kind of community that I want to co-create. Those who want to liberate themselves from the ego so that they can then see a call for love and be able to participate in the assistance of those who are calling for love. Because anybody who's angry or mad or judging or blaming or shaming somebody else or hurting or killing, they're calling for love. And if we don't understand that, then our ego is going to want to judge them or punish them or do whatever it is that egos want to do to other egos. So this is a very high level. And when I say high, now it's not better than anything else. It is just high because you're willing to look with the eyes of God. You're no longer using your little tiny little ego to look at things. You're saying, okay, God, what would you have me do? How do you see this brother and sister? And the only way God sees, because God doesn't judge, is with love, through a desire to acknowledge their wounds. There's a recognition, okay, these people are hurting, but the only thing that will really heal them is that love and compassion and acceptance. Basically, we look at everybody as a prodigal child of God, a prodigal brother and sister of ours. All right, so sentence 4 says, when the Bible says, judge not, that ye be not judged, it means that if you judge the reality of others, you will be unable to avoid judging your own. This is why anybody who's out there pointing at that bad, politician, bad orange, man, or bad, whatever they called Biden, senile, whatever, you are just simply unable to see the part of you that is calling for healing. So again, when the Bible says, judge not that ye be not judged, it means that if you judge the reality of others, you will be unable to avoid judging your own. The ego does not want you to see what it is doing to you. And so that you don't catch your ego tricking you, that's why the ego is such a liar, is because it is pointing at them. They're the problem. Not I have a problem. They are the problem. They are why I'm not happy. They are why I'm not safe. Do you see the lie in that? How can you have a problem? How can you be not safe when God created you without problems and safe? You're in the mind of God. You can't be any safer than that. So, understanding the truth of what is God's truth and what the ego has made up of this truth is crucial in this process of liberation. So, paragraph number 2 says, the choice to judge rather than to know is the cause of the loss of peace. The choice to judge, meaning I'm right, everything else is wrong, is what keeps us from being at peace because it blocks us from wanting to be open-minded. You know what 2 characteristics of a teacher of God are? Tolerance, open-mindedness. Tolerance means you don't judge, you become tolerant. Let me hear your side. Why is it that you feel this way? But to judge and not participate and to remain in a place of I know better than you is to prefer to be righteous and get that hit from the ego than to experience peace. Every single time we need to be right, we are saying, I don't like peace. Think about that. Every time the ego gets inflated, in that moment, you are choosing to leave your place of peace because you have to get agitated and aggravated, and you've got to call in the troops to protect you, and you're going to go to war. This is why the course is very clear. A characteristic of a teacher of God is defenselessness. When you can see what's happening, these people are listening to the ego, they're immature little children running the show. When you see, okay, they're angry, they're upset. Again, I was watching that entire speech last night, and I'm watching half the group in that room. The bulk of them are in their 60s, 70s, acting like immature little brats. I am not going to clap for that. No, What? Somebody did something great. Nope, I'm not going to clap for that because that's not my team. What? You are not going to support the country? You're not going to support anything good that is being done for the country, regardless of who is in the one that appear. They just appear to be in charge. They're not really in charge. When you can sit back and recognize the call for love in that group, I spent my time just sending love to these wounded little children who cannot be happy for anybody else. It reminded me of, when I was a little child, my mom used to have a saying, if you cry alone, but if you laugh, the world laughs with you. And I was looking at these pouty little children all alone there. The world is celebrating some incredible things, and this little group is just crying alone. And I was just sending so much love and gratitude. I was saying, thank you for showing the world the immature state that we are choosing. Some of us are choosing to transcend. Some of us are choosing to end the egoic trance that we are in that keeps us in this state of righteousness, uh, you know, name calling and bashing others, because all it shows is the immature level of those sweet little innocent, holy beings that they are. They don't know what they don't know, but they think they know everything. Isn't that funny? Moving down this journey was one of the most important things that I did for my own liberation was the day, and it wasn't easy, but I had to do it because I knew my peace depended on it. Was when I finally admitted to myself, I was a puddle of tears on the floor. I admitted, I really don't know much. I am not as smart as I thought I was. I do not. I really don't know much of anything. And I chose in that moment to get honest with myself and say, I don't really know much. But what I have come to know that I am so grateful for my courage was I came to know the one that does know everything. And when I align with the one that knows everything, I can stay humble and say, God, what would you have me know? What would you have me say? What would you have me do? I know that I go to God for my guidance. It's like I finally got it. I don't need to know everything, but I need to know who does know everything. I need to create a relationship, a direct line to the source of all knowing so that I can tap into that when it is that I need it, not so that Laina can get glory, but so that what is God can be glorified through my humbleness. And it is in that place of not knowing that I can't judge because I don't know what anything is for. I cannot judge what another person does because God sees the big picture. All the puzzle pieces are laid out. And last night I saw the perfect display of puzzle pieces that are necessary to show us what we no longer want to do because we're consciously making a choice of what it is that we prefer. And then there is, for others, there are those puzzle pieces that they're not going to question what they did. They're going to follow that, and they are going to stay in a place of resonance because their frequencies match. This group over here that doesn't can't celebrate good things for anybody is going to be the savior for this group that feels oppressed. Because if you feel oppressed, you don't know who you are. You got to find somebody to take care of you. If you know who you are, you will not listen to anybody who is unwilling to celebrate the good of all. So when you look at things like this and you really truly understand, sentence in paragraph number 2, the choice to judge rather than to know is the cause of loss of peace. You humble yourself and you maintain your peace. Judgment is the process on which perception, but not knowledge, rests. To judge is to judge from your perception. Are you seeing as a wounded 3-year old? Well, then you're going to judge as a 3-year old. Are you in a place of knowledge that I don't know what I don't know? God, you know, tell me what to do. Judgment is the process on which perception, but not knowledge rests. So everybody who's judging is judging from their ego's perception. And ego is just one point in all of humanity that has learned how to be who they are from two people, mother, father, and then their church, and then whoever was around them. They cannot know everything because they only experience a tiny little fraction of potentials, of possibilities. So to become humble enough to say, I don't know it all, is the beginning of really understanding who the real authority is, and it is God. But we have to go through a process of creating a relationship with God. I didn't want to talk to God when I was scared of God, so I had to work through many years of realizing that that was a made up God. The God of fear is a made up God. The God of truth that Jesus taught about is a God of love. So I had to learn how to open myself up to that God. It took me, like I said, years to be able to even want to talk to God, because my ego was becoming all spiritualized, and I thought I am God. Oh, the books say I am that I am. And then I realized, oh my gosh, there's so much more. So sentence number 3 says, I have discussed this before in terms of the selectivity of perception, pointing out that evaluation is its obvious prerequisite. That's one of those sentences that's a mouthful. So who's the I? Jesus has discussed this before in terms of the selectivity of perception. The ego selects what it wants to perceive. It's like you go to a dinner, and let's say it's a wonderful dinner and the server accidentally drops a glass of water on you. Your selectivity of that place, that's a horrible place, terrible service. You miss the people you were with, you miss the food. It might have been the best food you've ever had, but you selectively perceive this one thing to focus on. Same that happens with our childhood. We focus on that one thing that happened to us, and then we create uh, a whole story around that. So pointing out that evaluation is its obvious prerequisite. You cannot learn how to not judge until you go to that prerequisite. It is necessary, prerequisite. It is required that you acknowledge your selective perceptions based on your own personal influences when you were a child. So we have got to get to the root cause of our childhood dysfunctions and recognize that our egoic personality was formed in that environment. So we have to begin to do the work of every irritation is an invitation. You're upset about something, sit with it. You learn that there's something wrong with you. You learn that you can't handle conflict. You learn that you can't defend yourself. You learned all kinds of things that are not true. They were true in that moment, but you, as part of all that is, are not that moment. You are one with all of it. You need to access all of the strength, the power, the grace, the knowledge that is available to you from all that there is. One of the things that the ego does when it rises into power is it keeps us from knowing the truth of who we are. Because if we know who we are, as Jesus was teaching, that's very inconvenient. Do you know how many people we will put out of business by not buying what they sell us to try and make us feel better about ourselves, or make us look prettier, or make us look healthier, or make us look, buffer? When you know who you are, you will literally help to dismantle so many businesses that have been created in our lack of awareness of who we are. That's a very inconvenient business proposition. So you finding out who you are is an act of rebellion against a system that has kept us oppressed since before we could even speak. Humanity has been maintained at a level of ignorance that perpetuates being a cog in the machine that has us be enslaved unknowingly, realizing that we have so much power in us. But here's the thing. Just because we are being oppressed does not mean we're not using our power. We're just using it against ourselves. That is what is so important about understanding what judgment is all about, how those irritations are mirrors, reflections of our own inadequacies, a place to look within so that we can find who we really are, find our voice. So when I looked at this group last night in our beautiful um uh you know place in DC, I realized, oh my gosh, we've got so many children calling for love. I can't judge them and be mad at them. I was there too. Not only was it done to me, but I did it to my children. So we have to realize that everybody that is operating with, these little immature signs. Oh my gosh, I was watching that. I was going, ay, 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 ay. And these people really think that they are mature. Not that the other side is any better, but the immaturity that comes from an ego that is throwing a temper tantrum is fascinating to watch. And we call those adults. And more importantly, we label them our leaders. Oy, oy, oy. Anyway, so we've got to understand our authority problem. We really have got to get to the place that we understand. Sentence number 4, and I'm going to just leave it here and we'll come back to this. Let me find my pen so I can mark this. So this will be episode 188. And so we stopped right here. Sentence number 4, judgment always involves rejection. We're going to start with that next week because I'm just going to mention a tiny little bit of that. I'm going to kind of leave you with a cliffhanger. When you judge another or yourself, but let's use another. When you judge another, they are not being this, that, or the other. So they don't deserve my love. They don't deserve my compassion, my kindness. You are rejecting your power. You're saying, I don't have enough compassion to go around. I don't have enough kindness to go around. I must be made less than how God is. I must not have all that love in me. You're rejecting that God created you in its image, loving. You have all of that love to give, but your judgment is selectively deciding, I'm going to reject my ability to use my superpower. I'm not going to send you that love and kindness because I don't want to feel it moving through me. I don't want to feel that I have the power to be loving and kind all the time. I'm only going to use kindness and love selectively. I'm only going to let me have that experience of high frequency just with certain people, not you, certain people. So that means that for a little while, I'm rejecting being in the high frequency. I am choosing to be in the low frequency of rejecting you. And you know why that is? That is because inside of me, I have this story. Well, I'm not lovable. So I can't send you my love. So I'm rejecting being the conduit for that love to flow from me to you. Because if it was flowing from me to you, I couldn't judge you. I would have only compassion if I saw that it was that you were behaving as an immature child. If I saw your behavior, then I could go, oh, wow, that's what I used to do when I was a child. You are calling for love. Let me be the conduit. God, what would you have me say to this person? And then you would become an instrument of God's peace and you would walk around extending love because you did not reject you. But you cannot not reject you until you know what you are, who you are. You are the light of the world. You are here on this planet to bring the love and the light that has been missing. And it has been missing not because it wasn't here, but because people put lampshades over their light. Lampshades being the beliefs. We all have darkened ourselves. We all covered up the truth of who we are because we created this identity as a poor me. I'm not good enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not whatever enough. Well, I'm a sinner because, that's what the church said. I'm a sinner. And nothing could be a bigger lie ever told than how religion has told us that we are somehow sinners, that we are a mistake. How can we be a mistake if we know God and God is the all of all that is? Is all that is a mistake? Are all the planets, all the galaxies, all the universe, all the beauty, is all of that a mistake? All of that would have to be a mistake for you to be a mistake. But a point of liberation for me, when I moved out of my righteousness and I knew everything, I was right about everything, I became curious and I began to question things. You know what I found out about the word sin? It is actually now I can't remember if I think it's Greek terminology. Was it Sanskrit? I think that came from Greek, or Greek came from Sanskrit. Anyways, the word sin is an archery term. And the archery term is when you sin in archery, you missed the mark. You missed the mark. So if you don't hit that bullseye, you committed a sin. You missed the mark. That's all that it is. Interesting terminology. Every sport has their terminology. You missed the mark. And when I realized, so sin, doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me, something bad with me. I just missed the mark. Then all of a sudden it was like light bulb moment. Yes, I missed the mark. God created me perfect and magnificent and holy in the light of the world, and I was thinking I wasn't. Damn, did I miss the mark? Yes, it was one of those moments that probably for the first time in my life I spoke truth that freed my soul. I missed the mark because I believed things that weren't true. I was focusing my attention over here, but the mark was over here. The mark was God, and I was going this way, looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for something to fill me up, looking for the next, financial hit, the next, who's gonna praise me, who's gonna say, Laina, you're wonderful, who's gonna say that I'm amazing because of all the things that I was doing for them, all selfishly to get attention. Yes, I was missing the mark. I should have been doing out of love. I should have been doing out of the goodness of my own heart because my heart is made of goodness because it's made of God. Instead of doing things just for the glory of sharing and giving and caring, I was doing it to get. I was giving to get. Yes, I was missing the mark. I'm not here to get. I'm here to give for the sheer joy of the experience of allowing the love of God to flow through me. So I stopped judging when I understood that it involved rejecting the truth of who I am. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to reject this voice in me that keeps telling me I'm not what I am, causes me to sin and miss the mark. That's the voice that I'm not going to listen to. The voice that I want to choose to listen to is the voice of God. And it took me years. It's still taking me years, decades, in fact, to allow the perfection of that voice to flow unimpeded. I do it a lot, but it's not perfect yet. I still block it. I still have human thoughts. But for me, I'm very kind with myself when my ego gets involved because, I go through a process. Oh, this is that wounded little child. What is it that you're wanting? What are you trying to convince me that is wrong with me or whatever? And I don't listen to that lie anymore, like if it's true, but I listen to that part of me that is calling for attention because that irritation is an invitation for me to soothe myself and go, oh, okay, there's that little Laina from 6 years old feeling rejected, or this little Laina from 2 years old, whatever. And then, I need that. I need whatever it is in that space. I have to give it to me instead of judging that immature egoic side of me or judging that person I was about to cast and project that on. I am taking 100% responsibility for being as God created me. I am the light of the world. I bring a lot of power, same power that you have. And my superpower is allowing that power to flow consciously, to choose to be used as one that sees the good in all. Because when I see the good in all, it is the good in me that I'm seeing through. It cannot be otherwise. If you take one thing from today, take that. To judge another is to reject your magnificence. Plain and simple. To judge another is to reject who you are as God created you. And if it seems enticing to judge another, it's because you really don't know who God is. Come to know what God is, who God is, because that is the only way that we're going to find total, complete inner peace, because knowing God within is truly to feel the peace that passes all understanding. You cannot understand it in your head, but you feel it as you extend it. It is this movement of energy that takes over. And boy, there's nothing more delicious than that. Talk about a natural high. And for a while, I was addicted to that high until it became commonplace. I don't need to be addicted to what I am now. But, anyways, so keep in mind, um, we'll continue this next week. So we'll continue on this particular section next week for episode 189. Today's is 188. And then look for in the next coming weeks, I'll share some information about creating a circle for us to connect as those who are really truly committed to becoming a teacher of God. And I may just call it that, a circle for teachers of God, where we take the course and use the course as what we are committed to holding as a truth that we want to live into. Not, it's not a pity party about I wasn't living up to that. No, it's like, thank you for the awareness. Now, how do we stand and abide as these teachers of God that we were created to be? Plain and simple. All right. Any thoughts, comments, questions before we close this up? This charges me up. Thank you for allowing this to flow through me. And if no one has anything to say, Mike, you're going to say something. Yay.
Yeah, it's just as always, it's a pleasure to watch it all flow through you. There's, I don't know, I smile halfway or almost half the time as you're talking, just because so much of it rings true. It's really good.
Thank you for being a receiver of what I joyfully am willing to be a giver of. Appreciate it.
Thank you for giving because it flows through.
Thank you. We'll see you guys next week. Take care. Bye, guys.
Bye.